Okay, I'm back. So enough about the ex. Let's move on to living my best life. So in 2005, I was still living in Los Angeles, and I wanted to live my best life, and part of that meant travel. And so I got online and I found a teaching English job in China, and sight unseen, just enrolled, signed up for it, got the contract, and within like a month I was selling all my stuff and flying to China by myself. I don't think my family actually believed that I was doing it until I emailed them from China with my contact details. So it was just so abnormal coming from North Idaho, Montana, for your daughter to just suddenly go to China. But I guess that's one detail I forgot to mention. My ex, he was a white guy, but he spoke fluent Chinese, Mandarin, because he lived in Singapore and Taiwan. And so when we were, I don't know if you can hear my dog, he keeps squeaking a toy right now. But when we were married, we were managing an apartment building, and it was like 98% Chinese people and about 2% Hispanic. And so on a daily basis, I learned to speak Mandarin Chinese. I even answered the phone in Chinese, and then people would come asking for the girl they talked to on the phone, and I would tell them it was me, and they would be all shocked. So yeah, I was pretty conversational by that point, and serving in the Chinese congregation within my church as well. So I thought, well, I want to travel. Let's go to China first, since I already spoke the language. So anyways, flew to China and started teaching English to 1st through 5th graders. And, you know, when I was younger, I never wanted to babysit because kids kind of like scared me. I was much more into animals than kids. So this was my first experience really being around kids, and I have to admit it was super fun. They just tell it like it is. So I was pretty skinny back then, but you know, by Chinese standards, I wasn't that skinny. And just an example that just cracks me up was this little like 1st grader came up to me and pokes me in the belly and says, "你很胖," and that means you're fat. And so I looked at him and I said, "你很小," which means you're short. And we both just looked at each other like, yeah, pretty much. So anyways, the kids were awesome. They made me laugh all the time, and my experience in China was a really great one. I thought I was a tough country girl from Montana and Idaho, and living in China made me a lot tougher. I literally washed my food out of a bucket, and I washed my laundry out of the same bucket, and I took showers with the same bucket. Literally just fill up the bucket and pour it over your head, and that's how you take a shower. So my legs got really strong from learning how to squat because of all their toilets that are just holes in the ground. And yeah, there's so many stories about China. My favorite part about China, ironically, was the food. So amazing. And the Chinese food that we have here in the States, it's Americanized. I mean, maybe not in the big cities. In the big cities, you can find authentic Chinese food. But like in the town I live in right now, no, it's all deep fried and gross. But in China, the food was amazing. And sorry, my puppy's getting into stuff. Anyway, so I was there for just under a year. I had to come home a little early because my grandpa, who was my favorite person in the whole world, he got put into hospice. And I was glad that I came home when I did, because he only knew me for like 2-3 weeks, and then his dementia got too bad and he didn't remember who I was anymore. And then he died a few months later. And when I say home, at the time I didn't really have a home, so when I flew to visit my grandpa, that meant that I went back to Colorado. And when I say back, it was my first time living there. So I didn't have a car, so my mom found a car on eBay and from Chicago. So I flew from Beijing to Chicago, picked up this car, and then drove for a couple days across the country in the wintertime. and ended up in Colorado. And we're at 5 minutes. I guess a couple random things real quick about China again. I did climb the Great Wall. I hiked on the Great Wall. It was pretty awesome in wintertime. Definitely don't recommend wintertime because there's a lot of angles and no de-icer, no salt. And so thank goodness they had railing, because otherwise you feel like you're just going to slide right off the wall. And I took like I think it was an 18-hour bus ride down to Guangzhou. That was another extreme story in itself. But anyways, pretty adventurous. And yeah, so now I'm back in the States. I got off the plane and I wanted to kiss the ground, because even though China was a great experience, it made me really appreciate what we have here. So it's so clean here and our standards are so much higher, and it was nice to be home. But I will save the rest for another story. Thanks.